When a data breach makes the news, it usually sounds like a single moment in time. A headline, a number, an apology. But for the people whose data was exposed, that's not the moment it ends. That's the moment it starts.
Because once personal data is stolen, it doesn't just sit still. It moves. It's copied, traded, bundled, and reused. It bounces from system to system and breach to breach.
And for seniors, that bounce can land hard. Healthcare records, social security numbers, pension data, Medicare information, each one valuable on its own. Together, they form a complete identity.
An identity that criminals know is less likely to be closely monitored, harder to recover, and devastating when it's misused.
In this episode, we're not talking about hypothetical risks. We're talking about real breaches, real organizations, and real seniors left dealing with the fallout months or even years later.
Because the breach isn't the injury, it's the first strike in a long rally.
This is the Volley of Vulnerabilities, how exposed data bounces around and lands on seniors. Welcome to Fraud on the Front Porch, and the truth about fraud starts now. Hello, folks, and thanks for joining, listening, or watching. With me in studio today is my fellow fraud forayer, Sean, who will be with us quite a bit as we navigate this ocean of felonious activity. Sean, thanks for fighting the fight.
Tony, super excited to be here and get this started.
Sean, I remember when we first started talking about this journey that we wanted to go on together, we just wanted to do something good. Nothing campy or melodramatic, nothing self-congratulatory, no slapping each other on the back, nothing that, just our desire to put something good out there, right? Ironically, back in October, it was on my birthday, and what a great gift to connect with you over this topic and start all of these wheels in motion. It's been almost 5 months. Two of us have been studying, learning, planning. You know what's funny? We've come so far and we've got so far to go. But I think a couple of years from now, we're going to laugh about these moments that we've been stumbling over the last, 5 months now?
Yeah, I think this is great for us to tackle some of these issues head on, and there's a real need for information to get out there in this space. And I'm excited we get to address some of this with our listeners.
Awesome. Sean, as we mentioned today, we're talking about the volley of vulnerabilities. Sean, why do criminals and fraudsters prefer seniors' identities?
Unfortunately, seniors are heavily targeted more often than other age groups because these data breaches intersect directly with retirement income, healthcare, fixed finances, and because criminals actually look for this segment of the population once there is a data breach and they can get their hands on this personal information.
Is there something that seniors particularly do or act in order to become more vulnerable?
Not usually more than anybody else. They just become due to either trustworthiness or maybe a little bit less attention to finances and information that comes in the mail or through email. They just are more targeted than other populations.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's so many different areas where seniors place their data, like in our intro where we talked about healthcare related things, or they just have so many places they've placed their data throughout their life. They've put it in credit reports. They've put it in Medicare records. They've placed their data into a lifetime of opportunities where they've applied for credit, or they have bought homes, or they've gotten credit cards, and that data just swims out there. It just sits out there, and there's so many different organizations that have touched that data. And as a result, they have opened themselves to a data breach really that could happen in almost any sector of our economy.
Yeah, and a lot of times these start with targeted scams. So once these data breaches occur, those bad actors learn first and last name, addresses, phone numbers, all kinds of personal information, in addition to those social security numbers, Medicaid, Medicare numbers that get out there. And it makes it really easy, again, for these bad actors to put together a script to reach out to these individuals who may not even know yet that their data has been compromised, and try to connect with them on social media or email or through the phone as if they are a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, or a trusted medical professional. And that is how these long-term scams can start, because these actors have this personal information and try to establish that trust right off the bat.
I was looking up some of the ways in which some of this data gets used when data breaches happen, targeting that senior population. And what I found is that there's four main areas where they get targeted. The first is identity theft, where people can open credit lines under seniors' names. Uh, there's medical identity theft, where they can use stolen insurance information to obtain care, prescriptions, start getting some drugs under somebody else's name, and there's no trace that you did that. I mean, that's absolutely despicable. There's medical equipment you can actually solicit and get for yourself. I mean, it's pretty endless, and it really flies in the face of whatever the creativity of the fraudster is. Then there's the government benefits fraud, where they can use the SSNs in order to uh, create fraudulent tax returns or claim benefits that aren't necessarily due to them. And then, of course, there's the financial fraud, looking at bank accounts and the creation of synthetic identities. I mean, it really just permeates society in every way. How do people who have had their data compromised deal with it? Like, what kinds of things do they do? Do they have credit services available to them? Do most of them even act? Do they even do anything about it once their credit is compromised or their identities have been stolen? Like, what's their recourse?
Yeah, the first thing to do if you find out any of your personal information and your data has been part of a data breach is just take a breath and kind of write yourself. If you see those notices in the mail, it doesn't mean your money is already gone. It doesn't mean quite yet that anybody has signed up for um, a credit card in your name. But step one is just to confirm that the data breach is real, because there are scams out there that will try to have you sign up for
Hmm.
um, a fake service to have you recapture your personal information. And that's yet another scam down the line
Oh
that these
boy.
individuals use. Um, but I'll give you an example of during the Equifax data breach that happened in 2017, millions of Americans and around the world had their data compromised in that data breach, not just senior citizens. Personally, I was one of them, and um, someone tried to sign up for unemployment under my name through the
Oh
state of
boy.
Illinois using my social security number. And so what I had to do, and what victims of a data breach typically should do next, is just contact those three credit bureaus. There's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can have a fraud alert placed on your credit file, and that will cause a second layer of approval to have to happen if somebody opens a credit card in your name. Those typically last about a year, and you do have to renew them annually, but that is a great first step just to get out in front of anybody that's trying to use your social security number or any other type of identifiable information to open some type of financial um, instrument like a credit card or a bank account under your name.
Yeah, the crazy thing is Equifax itself had a data breach back, I think, sometime between 2017 and 2025, compromised 147 million Americans. They stole SSNs, birth dates, addresses, credit histories. Can't imagine what you could do with stuff like that. It led to a ton of IRS fraud, a lot of tax submissions, refunds that were taken that were due to individuals. Um, and then credit lines, a lot of
Yep.
credit lines that got opened. Um, just absolutely amazing. Um, it's funny when I've looked at some of the ways in which some of these organizations deal with this credit circumstances and how they try to make it up to seniors. It's extremely reactive, first of all, because there's so many things they can't do once the money's already been stolen. I imagine there's insurances out there for certain circumstances, but by and large, the big warning is, well, we'll monitor your credit for free for a while. I just got a letter in the mail over the weekend telling me that not only mine, but my daughter's accounts were potentially compromised, and free credit services for a year were offered. And I'm like, well, that's really helpful, but the breach has already happened and they already have my data. How are you going to get it back? There's really no way to get it back. It's kind of crazy. And I think a lot of people are going around thinking that they have some sort of protection around data breaches. But if the data breach happens, there really isn't a lot of protection. I think what has to happen after that is vigilance, right? It's really nothing more than being vigilant, constantly monitoring your accounts, looking at statements, whether you get them electronically or on paper, and just investing in what's yours and being aware of where your accounts stand.
Yeah, and that's a big piece of it. And it's unfortunate because many of these seniors might have impeccable credit over
Yeah.
the span of their life and maybe have not been watching, those individual credit card statements coming in uh, or mailings from credit bureaus because they've never had to worry about this their entire life. They've managed their finances responsibly, and then due to a data breach, just like Equifax, for example, um, their data is leaked and their identity's in trouble through no fault of their own.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And the formula pretty much ends up the same each time, whether the person's been injured or not. They'll enroll in credit-free or free credit monitoring systems. Then they'll place a fraud alert. They'll help you place fraud alerts. They'll consider a credit freeze altogether. Credit freezes are pretty good in that uh, nothing takes place without you actually being alerted to the activity. One of the things I've seen done for a long time is when you present a credit card to somebody, on the credit card, I've had people write, ask for my ID, right?
Yep.
So that way the clerk is ensuring that the credit card being used is in conjunction with the license of a picture that looks like the person who's making the purchase. How many people will take a credit card and not know who it is who's actually making the purchase, right? That in and of itself is a data breach. And of course, you've got people who take all of this information and apply for credit cards and get credit cards in your name and start spending.
Yep.
Start spending away. Um, let's talk about any individual organizations who've had some data breaches and maybe share a little bit about some of those data breaches and what it's led to with regard to either senior populations or maybe some of the activities that took place. I've got a few here I can discuss if If you want me to
Sure.
start, or
Yeah.
if you've got something you want to talk about, I'd love to hear it.
I think this is a good segue into, there were some Medicare account breaches starting in
Yeah,
2024, and that's a direct target on the senior population. Um,
big time. Yeah.
Medicare
Let's talk
confirmed that
before you talk
criminal.
about that, let's talk
Sure.
about why Medicare is so important and all of the data elements of your personal life that you've actually shared in order to be a part of Medicare. I mean, you've got your SSN, you've got your full name, you've got your address, you've got all your medical records. If anybody wants to do any sort of verification, if you have anybody who's dependent on you, you've got their information as well. What other kinds of data elements would be available in Medicare? It seems like that's the most comprehensive data store, so to speak, that anyone could provide to someone else.
That one can be pretty scary because with ha- having access to those Medicare numbers, in conjunction with other personal information, again, names, addresses, phone numbers, um,
Phone numbers, yeah.
people can easily um, portray themselves as maybe a caregiver for an elderly relative. And again, um, that level of fraud can really open the door for them to allow other things towards medical billing, um, access, like you said, even to more personal information, more medical data, opens the door for pharmaceutical fraud.
Oh,
So they can start placing orders for medication, and really that can get messy before anybody even knows something's going on. And a way around that really is to you can get a new Medicare card and a new Medicare number. If that happens to you, that's usually step one in that regard.
is that what happened in the Medicare story you were thinking about?
Yeah.
Was that some of the remuneration? People got
Uh,
new Medicare cards?
yeah. Hundreds of thousands of people involved in that breach, they were just issued new Medicare numbers.
Who was the organization?
CMS.
CMS. Okay. Seems that there are a lot of healthcare data breaches. I've got one here for Trizetto that happened in 2024, 2025. Mercer Advisors. I know they do a lot of benefits consulting. They did a Shiny Hunters cyber attack. Shiny Hunters, a fraud group that goes out and basically tries to breach systems, then hold things for ransom. Uh, just crazy. So not only do these folks get breached, they then have to go back and pay millions of dollars in ransom to get their 5.7 million client records back. uh, I think they paid, if I remember correctly. They stole names, social security information, financial information. Uh, we got seniors in an upscale community. They got awarded some money after the breach. 6,500 plus a piece, but I don't know what the average taken from them was. You got 23andMe. 23andMe, people love that site for all of its legacy information it provides and um, all the legacy data. They got a genetic data breach. Hackers accessed 6.9 million DNA records. Think about 5, 10 years from now when we all go to DNA verification, right? Right now we're doing eyeballs or we're doing thumbprints or fingers or something like that. Soon it's going to be, you have to give us your DNA. Well, somebody's out there already with your DNA. So that's going to create a whole world of fraud. I mean, and the way fraudsters are so creative, we haven't even begun to see what's going to happen with them yet. They steal genetic ancestry data. So, like you said, impersonating a loved
Mhm.
one, very, very easy to do. They create all the family tree connections. Again, identity-based extortion becomes the easy thing to have happen in situations like that. What did they do? They forced password resets and multi-factor authentication. So what that means is they basically had every person logging in the next time had to create a two-step verification process. I don't know how much that reduced things, but there was a multiple class action lawsuits that got filed against them. I'd have to do a little more digging to figure out how that all worked out. You've got a group that move it. They had a breach impacting all of their pension funds. It's like, Sean, is there anything we can keep safe out there?
I know that's pretty scary when you're giving up pension and annuity data, um, even through a third party. Again, another situation where um, those who are affected did nothing wrong, and it's just that data not being secured. Um, that one gave up quite a few social security numbers, and it's just so difficult to keep that data safe. And when the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow there is an entire state's worth of pension funds, um, that security has to be taken much more seriously.
Think about working your entire life and having it all on a pension that you're ready to retire for or with, and having all of that money redirected to someone else.
Yep.
You didn't lose it in the stock market. You didn't make a bad investment. You trusted. You trusted that somebody's systems were invulnerable. Kind of speaks to diversification, huh?
Yeah.
Don't have all your eggs in one basket. But unfortunately, a lot of people's pensions are really that's their thing. That's their one thing, and they don't have that option. But it might be worth investigating. If you do have a pension, it might be worth looking into, like, what are the securities around this pension fund and who's managing it and what's their track record for keeping data clean and safe, et cetera, right? Kaiser Permanente had a data breach in 2024. They stole names, IP addresses. Wow. Now I'm on your computer, right? Now I'm in your directories on your home network, health-related browsing activity. They stole all of that. Gosh, and people are creative. What do you do with health-related browsing activity? Like you said, maybe there's equipment fraud. Maybe there's prescription fraud. Who knows? I mean, all of that can be taken from you. If you're going to connect with a computer, you're going to put yourself at risk for a data breach, regardless. I mean, I get all spun up just putting in my American Express card into a website. I can't imagine putting all my Medicare information into a website.
Yeah, Tony Travel's another big one. Marriott had a data breach
Oh, geez.
not too long ago, and that
Yeah.
exposed data on hundreds of millions of guests in their network, including passport numbers. So,
Wow.
again, if you think about retired individuals, maybe they travel more frequently. And now you've got, again, a bad actor with that travel data and location data and maybe with passport information. And now you get the phone call that says, "Hey, I'm with Marriott. I just wanted to follow up with you on some special offers. And just please verify this is your passport. This is the last four digits of your passport number. And I just want to make sure you are who you are," and then establish that trust again right off the bat and say, "Hey, I see
Damn.
you're going to be in Cozumel in a month, and we have this great excursion, and get on this boat and go swim with the dolphins, and come sign up for this. And this is a limited time offer. I just need you to, it's a deal of the century. Just pay for it right now." And then right there, you've got the trust. You have somebody who seems to know where you're going to be and in what hotel. So it sounds all legitimate. And then next thing you know, you're punching in your credit card number to go take a mini vacation on an excursion that doesn't exist. And there again, It's just a matter of having the right data and making that right connection with somebody. And those are difficult because as a human, you've got those layers of protection around who you trust and who you don't trust. And, some little statements like that can work their way through those layers and, again, make it very easy for trusting individuals to give up that financial information.
And the scammers are creative. They might create algorithms around the data of your historical travel and provide that data to organizations and make them buy it legitimately back from them. They're probably massaging the data better than the analysts of the organization. So they're
Yep.
they're not only scamming the the individuals whose data records fit from what they've taken, they're going back, and if it's not ransomware, it might be some other sort of activity. I I'm just not sure people realize how vulnerable they are and how smart these scammers really are and how serious they take their craft.
Yes.
I've watched episodes of shows where they talk about these scams and the data and what they do with it, and they use it to rob ATM machines. They use it to just enroll in all sorts of credit cards. People find out they went from 0 to, like, 25 credit cards in, like, a week, and what amazes me is how quickly these individuals can use this data and make use of the data to establish credit, buy something that they didn't, uh, have any desire to purchase, and maybe they get a fraud alert, maybe they don't, but having fraud alerts is certainly one of the major protective measures an individual should go after. And it's not just out there in the private sector, but the Office of Personnel Management got hacked. Um, they've had data breach issues all between 2015 and 2025. They've had fingerprints stolen. They've had background data check. I mean, I don't know if you've ever worked for the government, but there's a form you fill out with the government when you work for them, especially when you're trying to get a security clearance. You have disclosed everything you've ever done in your entire life, good and bad, right? Who wants to provide that information to anybody on a major scale? Of course, SSNs, that's the no-brainer. Employment history. They might take employment history and exploit you based on that. They mostly targeted federal employees, um, but they also opened themselves up to foreign social engineering attacks, whereby maybe you compromise somebody within the federal government and you get them to look the other way because of the data you have on them and the way you might be able to exploit them, bribe them, or, et cetera. Seniors, I can only really imagine seniors are targeted based on their histories, what might be historically available, things they may have been involved in that the general public shouldn't know. And if you don't want the general public to know, now we have a ransom attack, right? So, yeah, I'm seeing that Marriott, they gave up passport numbers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Uh,
It
oof.
just helps those scammers put together really highly convincing stories because they have those personal details. And that is, again, most scams for seniors start with that trust. It's not, the money doesn't start disappearing the next day. They start with that familiarity. Criminals kind of earn that trust on their way in, and the harm can be delayed. Things can happen months or even years down the road once you've lost that data. So
Yeah.
it's important if you get a notice that you've been part of a large data breach to just watch, keep an eye on your financial records monthly. Um, if it's a Medicare breach, make sure you're not receiving bills or explanations of benefits for services you did not have done, you did not receive. And importantly, don't Don't be embarrassed. Reach out to someone you trust to help you work through this, because it can feel like you can be embarrassed. You feel like you screwed up. You feel like your data's out there and people are scamming you. And really, at any point of these long-term, long recovery timelines with no clear end in sight, is just to talk with someone you trust and have you help them work, have them help you work through this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. There's a reason why um, seniors don't come forward. They often feel ashamed that it happened to them. They don't know that it's happening to everybody else. They think they're unique. Maybe they feel like they were stupid and got themselves involved. But when a data is breached from another organization, that is not a senior's fault. That is not
Correct.
somebody else's folly. That's nothing somebody did wrong. Um, they don't come forward because uh, they're just they're unaware. They don't know. They don't know they're supposed to. Um, they they might be entitled to settlements. They might be entitled to reimbursements. They might be entitled to some sort of identity theft restoration. They may be able to join a class action suit, but they're less likely to file claims.
Mhm.
Their seniors are less likely to navigate online portals, right? Some of these class action lawsuits, they slow roll you, so to speak, in that they want you to go to this website, put in all this information, and they just got scammed with data. What's going to make them put in more
Right.
information? How ironic is that? So they
Exactly.
call them out to put in the data. They want them to submit documentation. So this is really where getting somebody else to look over your shoulder, getting somebody else involved, getting
Mhm.
somebody else who cares about you and wants to see a good outcome for you, and kind of doing the smell test, making
Yeah.
sure that
Like,
what you're being asked to do, if you've been defrauded in any way, you're actually on the path to doing. Um,
yep. You want to reach out to a spouse or an adult child, a trusted friend. Maybe you do have that trusted financial advisor that you've worked with for a long time, because scammers really rely on you being embarrassed and feeling isolated and scared to take action. And just talking about it, even with somebody you know and respect and trust, actually protects you. And
yeah,
that gives you the confidence to move forward with those resolutions you just mentioned, because it is a long-term process. Again, my example, my credit is still frozen since the day I
wow,
found out that
and you're
my
a young guy.
identity was compromised, and it makes signing up for new credit cards and things like that a little bit more painful. But that's the length I go to make sure nobody's opening uh, credit cards or bank accounts under my name. And
Yeah,
you do seniors do should rely on somebody they trust to help them through that process of protecting themselves going forward.
yeah, agreed. Going back to this whole kind of the ecosystem of data that surrounds a senior, the typical things that seniors interact with: the Medicare, the Social Security Administration, pension systems, as we mentioned, hospitals, specialists, senior living communities, financial advisors, long term care insurers. If there's anybody who's helping take care of your parents or your loved ones or your older, not just senior living centers, but maybe private care
Yep.
outside.
Yep.
All of these organizations, just high value, high personal data. As we mentioned here, the Social Securities, the Medicare IDs, their medical histories, their financial account information, their benefits records, any of these, any of these integrated. We all like to joke that, A isn't talking to B, but A's talking to B a lot more than we realize in our society. Our systems are way more connected than people realize. Otherwise, the fraudsters wouldn't be able to perpetrate the fraud as easily as they do so often. All of these systems create what we would, I guess, would call a full identity kit of information. And what makes, as I think you mentioned earlier, what makes this data so valuable is that so many seniors have a lifetime of really good credit
Yes.
and long credit histories. And a lot of our seniors, their addresses rarely change. And it's because those addresses rarely change, that data's solid. You're not bouncing around. You're not worried about verifying who Sean is or who Tony is. You got it because Sean's been in his address for 37 years.
Yep. Yep.
This is the Sean, right? They've got retirement savings. And with retirement savings, that's just ripe for the taking. And then fraud alerts less likely to be set up. I think lower generations, younger generations may be more attuned to fraud, or maybe they're just oblivious at this point. I think where I hear or see the majority of fraud alerts is in that whole 40 to 60 range right now, people in their 40s to 60s. But fraud alerts are available for just about anything. And some organizations put fraud alerts on whether you ask for it or not. And that's really good. I know my local bank does. If there's any transaction that's in any sort of question, they've got all sorts of thresholds, like anything cashed over $3,500 or any check written to an organization that's not on a, say, whitelist, so to speak. I will get a notification. My credit card statements from American Express will come mid-month and say, "Hey, here's where you're headed for the month. Are you okay with this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I spent too much money, but still, it looks pretty good. It looks reasonable, right? It looks
Yeah.
probably less than horrific." And then I'll get my statement at the end of the month, and it'll be pretty much, in sync with the mid-month report that I got. So I'll be able to go from there. But what's funny about seniors and seniors being really involved in healthcare in one form or another, almost every healthcare provider, Anthem, Aetna, Kaiser, they've all had data breaches. And it makes me wonder how many other organizations are out there with data breaches that we just don't know about, right? And
Yep.
how many people have been defrauded that we just don't know about. A lot of people, as you said earlier, they won't come forward. It's like any other crime, I guess, in that there's what you see and then there's a lot underneath. I could probably apply that to just about any argument. I won't
Yep.
get too political, but
Yep.
probably any argument it's there. Um, let's talk a little bit about seniors getting defrauded out of their data and why, on maybe an individual basis, they make themselves more open to data. I've got a statistic here that says 50% of all unsolicited calls from unknown numbers to seniors get answered.
Wow.
What do you
That's
think about that?
that's quite a statistic there.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big steps when you do know you've been a victim of a data breach is you've got to kind of listen for those calls. And if there's, again, someone posing as another organization, such as Medicare, Social Security, your bank, using those real personal details to sound convincing, usually as part of that fraud, as part of those fraudulent phone calls, you're going to pick up on a sense of urgency. It's
Yeah.
going to be, hey, you need to pay for this now. Hey, collections are coming. I guess you didn't know you owed us this money for this medical procedure. And I have that you were at this hospital on this date and received this procedure, and you haven't paid this bill. And that sense of urgency instills a bit of panic in those seniors and in anybody that receives those calls. And it can lead to these fraudulent again, typing in your credit card, giving them access to your bank account, logging into your bank on your browser, and allowing that bad actor to remotely control your PC and redirect funds to other locations. Um, but a big piece of that is it would be great if we never answered those calls in the first place. I agree with you, Tony.
Yeah.
But to really learn to recognize it's that added urgency in that fraud to get you to take action immediately rather than be able to sit back, digest the information. If you typically did owe money at an overdue bill, you would have had plenty of notices come in the mail. And if you or someone or your loved one who you're working through this with still believes it may be a legitimate bill or a legitimate cost, hang up on that person and call the organization yourself. That
That's a
hanging
really
up
good
on those
idea.
urgent calls is the best way to avoid those fraudulent scams. I think right now at the time we're recording this, it's a good season for fraudulent tax calls. You owe money to the IRS. Pay now. A lot of times it's just an auto dialer and it sounds like a robot on your voicemail that says you owe money and you're about to go to jail or whatever. But again, these bad actors, these fraudsters get access to a little bit of your personal data and they can make that request for payment sound much more convincing.
You're right. Pause, question, ask for help, right?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Pause, question, ask for help. Always question. Uh, who remembers what medical bills they've paid, right?
Right.
Especially if you're paying for multiple, yourself, your spouse. Um, always go back through. There should be some record of it somewhere. Don't take anything at face value. And again, like I like to say, the number one rule in fraud prevention: never initiate a financial transaction for a phone call you did not initiate. Never.
That's great
Never
advice.
pay somebody over the phone. Never offer to pay somebody over the phone if you didn't make the call. And I like what you said about checking the organization. Don't let them tell you where to check.
Right.
Hang up on them and you find the place you need to check. And again, pause, question, ask for help. Get somebody involved. You might save them by getting them involved. In other
Yep.
words, that might be their inheritance, right? Um, texts. I read something. Now, there's a lot of stuff out on the internet. So you got to be really careful what you do and don't believe. But in any event, somebody printed this. They said that more than 50% of all unsolicited texts, links, got clicked on. And of those that got clicked on, 23% of them led to ultimate fraud. So the question there is, why do fraudsters do this? Because it works.
Yep.
It works. It's that simple.
Yes.
It works. It's their business. It's what they do for a living. Seniors, retirees spent a career, a lifetime doing what they did for a living. This is what fraudsters do for a living. And they're not emotionally connected to you. And they see it as their job to take your money. And if they can take your money, they had a good day. And if you can't get it back, they had a better day.
Mm-hmm.
They see their job as taking your money and they see your job as trying to get it back. There was a story I wanted to share about a woman who lost some data. This is Linda's story. The ripples after the breach. It started with a letter, plain white envelope, nothing remarkable. But inside was the first tremor of a quake that would shake the life of a 72-year-old retiree named Linda. She'd heard about the Equifax breach on the news a month earlier. 147 million people, they said. She never imagined she was one of them. Sound familiar? Why should she? She paid her bills on time. She lived quietly. She didn't shop online. She wasn't the type to be targeted. But data breaches don't care about types. They care about social security numbers. And hers was now in the wild. First ripple hit in February. Linda mailed her tax return like she had every year since 1971. 2 weeks later, the IRS sent a notice. Seems we already received a return filed under your social security number. Her heart dropped. Someone had beaten her to her own identity. She spent hours on hold, hours verifying who she was, hours proving who she wasn't. Her refund, money she counted on, was frozen in limbo. Then came the second ripple. A credit card company called to verify unusual activity. Except Linda didn't have a card with them. A stranger did, opened in her name, charged up to the limit, and left for her to clean up. Her credit score plunged. Her trust in the world plunged with it. And then came the third ripple. The one that scared her the most, a medical bill, arrived from a hospital in another state. A procedure she'd never had. A doctor she'd never met. A diagnosis she didn't recognize. Someone had used her identity to get medical care. And suddenly, her Medicare account was flagged. Her real prescriptions were delayed. Her real claims were questioned. Her real medical history, her lifeline, was no longer fully hers. Linda described it later as a second job I never asked for. A job with no pay, no breaks, and no end in sight. She froze her credit. She filed reports. She disputed charges. She corrected medical records. She enrolled in monitoring services. She learned to distrust every unknown number on her caller ID. Equifax offered credit monitoring, reimbursements, and identity restoration services, and they helped some, but the work, the fear, the hours lost, those were hers alone. Because that's the truth about data breaches. They don't just steal numbers. They steal time. They steal peace. They steal the sense of safety seniors spend a lifetime building. Linda's story isn't rare. It's just one of the few we've heard. Most seniors never speak about it publicly. They suffer in silence. Most never know where the ripples begin, only that they keep coming. And that's why awareness matters. Because the breach may start with a company, but the fallout lands on people like Linda.
Yeah, that story about Linda really sums up everything we've just talked about,
Yeah.
Tony, is that the damage can happen and you're completely unaware until those bills and those notices start showing up and piling up in your mailbox.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the Lindas of the world and what happens to them, and I've looked into how several companies respond to these breaches, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, but it seems very formulaic in how these companies do it. I imagine there are legal reasons why it's formulaic, and I imagine there's a preponderance to help these organizations ward off these class action lawsuits,
Yep.
because they're inevitable when you have massive data breaches like that. And then, of course, you have the lawyer population, the sharks in the water, who are no doubt getting in line when an unfortunate circumstance like this comes along. But it seems to be basically a seven-step process where these organizations, first they send out a formal breach notification letter. Hey, we got tagged. What we're going to do to fix it. Maybe how to get some free credit screening along the way. And then they may send some email notifications. Excuse me. Some organizations may actually even follow up with phone calls, although nowadays most tend not to, simply because of the trust factor involved. They post notices on their website. Any organization that's had a data breach, you can go to their website pretty quickly and figure out how they. So if someone does contact you saying there's been a data breach, there's part of your investigation. Go to the organization's website and look for some news related to that, or look for something in any of the business journals or any of the major news uh, publications as to whether or not the data breach is actually legitimate.
Yep.
Because as you said earlier, Sean, they may be looking for the double scam, right? Scamming you with the fact that there was a scam. Then they try to scam you after the scam with another scam. That's called the recovery scam. So this thing can just be endless. Sometimes they'll, if it's a healthcare related organization, they have to notify HHS, Health and Human Services. And then sometimes they'll set up a dedicated call center so that you can reach them and discuss the specific implications of the fraud and maybe how you individually may or may not have been compromised. And then if some of the data is missing, they may notify the media. They may put out a PSA, a public service announcement, letting folks know. I think what it leads to for seniors in these situations is a few things. One, it's an immediate confusion. Is
Yep.
this real or is this a scam? Right? What do I need to do? Like, what's my next step? Immediately there's fear, right? Like, what does this mean for me, my social security, my independence, my ability to keep going? What's going to happen to me? And then, of course, the overwhelming aspect of what do I do first, right? What am I going to do first? I don't know if there's any perfect first move. I think maybe the perfect first move is to not go at it alone.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Bring somebody else in immediately. Worst case scenario, they'll probably be thinking with a clearer head. You can divide and conquer the investigation notifications that you have to make and what you need to do. One of the things that I found interesting when I was reading the letter I got over the weekend was we don't know any known impact on people. It's kind of their get out of jail free card
Yep. Yep.
for, hey, you're not screwed over yet, but wait, there's chapter 2.
Yes.
It's coming. So, boy. Um, anything else you want to share related to this topic of data breaches and just how scary it can be and what folks should be able to do? You want to?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate those steps. If you do find out you are involved in a data breach, step 1, like you just went through, confirm that it's real,
Yeah.
and then reach out to someone you trust. Get somebody to help partner with you through this process, because it can be scary, can be embarrassing. Well, you can feel embarrassed. It's never usually your own fault. But you can feel that isolation, and that is what the scammers are looking for. And then once you have somebody who's not, as emotionally involved with the process as you might be, because you are a target of a scam, then it is going through those processes of placing a fraud alert on your credit, or even freezing your credit altogether, reviewing those accounts at least on a monthly basis. If you are enrolled in Medicare, Medicaid, check with those departments. Keep an eye on those statements, and then typically you are offered some type of temporary credit monitoring. It doesn't hurt you to sign up for that, as long as it costs you nothing. It just puts an extra set of eyes on your credit accounts, watching for that trouble. And then unfortunately, it's a long road, so be ready for the next wave of scams. Be ready for people calling you, texting you, emailing you, and even sending you post office mail. Um, listen for those calls that appear to introduce some type of urgency in payment, and hang up on those people by default, and call the organization yourself if you think something's wrong. But those are really the steps to being proactive once you find out you're a victim of one of these data breaches, Tony.
Yeah, I really like those. I think maybe we should post something on the website and just maybe a little job aid or something like that. Just kind of help people understand these steps. You know, one thing you didn't mention that's probably completely in everybody's mind already is read the letter slowly when you get it. Right?
Yep.
Read it once, twice, maybe even three times. Just make sure that you know exactly what it's telling you, what was exposed, and what, quote, the company or organization plans to do about it. Really sets you up for all the steps you mentioned going forward. Um, okay. Sean, it's been fun
Thanks,
discussing
Tony.
this with you. One down, 450 to go.
Yep.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Um, thanks again for being with us today, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation together.
Yep. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me
You
on.
betcha. All righty. You have a great day.
You too.
If there's one thing we want to leave you with, it's this. A data breach is almost never a single event.
It's a chain reaction. One stolen record can trigger credit fraud, medical identity theft, benefits abuse, and years of cleanup.
And seniors are often the ones carrying the heaviest burden, not because they're careless, but because the systems holding their data were never designed with their realities in mind.
If you or someone you care for has ever received a breach notice, remember, don't panic. Read it carefully, freeze your credit if needed, and watch financial and medical statements closely.
And don't do it alone. A trusted family member, caregiver, or advisor can make all the difference.
Because recovery isn't just about restoring credit scores or fixing paperwork, it's about restoring confidence.
Data may bounce, but harm doesn't have to.
Awareness is protection, preparation is power.
Thanks for listening. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who might need it.
And we'll see you next time.
Pause, question, ask for help. Today's episode is the first of many podcasts we'll be hosting on Mark for You. It's a special episode dedicated to Mark Decanter, not only because it's our first, but because it's being recorded on what would have been Mark's 60th birthday. An individual dedicated to education sparked what is and will continue to be our mission: education. Our efforts to embrace education lest we embrace poverty. If there's anything we've shared that's opened your eyes or changed the way you see the world of fraud, we have Mark to thank. Let's keep what you've worked so hard to have where it belongs. Always remember to pause, question, and ask for help.